I am an author. I am an empowerment coach, y'all. I'm a mom to three mini versions of myself who I always say don't always look like me, but they tend to act like me on most occasions. That being said, I am on a mission to help women just like yourselves break through the barriers of self limiting belief systems while you're able to begin amplifying your voice so you too can begin walking in your God given purpose. And let me let you know, Ignite Your Glow is not your average podcast. This is truly a movement, you guys. And it's a space where you're able to grow, heal, and redefine your life and the possibilities that are right in front of you. So let's dive into some deep conversations that are faith filled with empowerment, practical strategies, and more. All right, y'all, let's jump into today's episode. And we're going to be talking about having unshakable faith and unshakable confidence. So let's go. So, truth be told, this really was going to be more so about unshakable confidence. But I feel like with faith and confidence, they really do go hand in hand, especially because we think about the things that we're told, right? And when I think about confidence, I remember the concept of when I was younger, right? And I didn't really personally look at myself as like, oh, I'm super confident as a kid. That personally just wasn't my perspective. Now, I had a lot of friends growing up, and a lot of them they were confident. At least that's how it seemed to be, right? They were confident in their looks. They were confident in the way they carried themselves. They always, had their heads up high and stuff like that. And they spoke with this boldness. And I truly just loved it because my friends didn't judge me for not being like them, but they simply embraced me. They simply accepted me as who I was. And for me, y'all, I thought that was amazing. But I feel like it's one of those things that because I was able to be around other women, right, who were confident, that it allowed me to affirm who I was because I didn't have to feel as though, oh, I'm less than or X, Y, and Z. No, I got to feel as though I was just as worthy or better yet, just as capable as anyone else. But that's not everybody's story. And I really wanted to highlight that part because I feel like when we think about having unshakable confidence, we're not just looking at the mannerisms that a person carries. We're not just looking at the ways in which they move about life and whatnot, but we're also taking into consideration, where does that come from? There's a young lady who I saw a post from recently who said, confidence isn't necessarily something that you're born with, but it's something that's cultivated over time. And I like to agree with that statement. I do feel like there are people who are naturally confident, but at the same time, I do believe that there must have been this cultivating practice, right? That went ahead and really, it really endorsed those emotions, those feelings, right? It really allowed them to embrace that said confidence versus a person who may not have had that same predicament, right? Because there are people who, their households, their families, they didn't look at them the same way. For whatever reason, they were looked as less than, they were looked at as worthy, as unworthy. They were told lies. There were all these secrets and all these things that took place that inhabited inside of them. But those things may or may not necessarily have been a setback depending on that person, right? Why? Because sometimes what happens, and this is where the resiliency comes into play here, is that a person sees that situation, right? And they take charge, or some people do, not everyone. Some people look at the negative, they take charge, and they say, I'm going to be better than whatever that was once said about me, or I'm going to be better than whatever it was that they believe about me, right? So there's this charge of energy that they begin to really just hone in on, and they say, I'm going for it and I'm diving in. Why? Because I am going to defeat and defy the odds that are set against me. That's one side. But then there's also this other side, right? The folks who have allowed these words to really just trample on them, right? They trampled on their mind, they trampled on their behaviors, they trampled in their spirit. And because of that, it's caused them to shrink back. It's caused them to dim their lights. It's caused them to kind of just get by in life, but not really fully shine or emerge as who they're called to be. For whatever reason, the confidence that they may have had was trampled so much so that whatever was left inside of them from their perspective hasn't allowed them to really come forth in the ways in which they should be able to. I feel like there's kind of this back and forth, and I think it depends on one, what is already inside of you, for real. And then number two, the mindset that we carry. Because I believe that a person with a resilient mindset, they're going to bounce back. Not because necessarily they're any different from the next person, but there's something within them, right? That is like, you know what? No, I'm taking charge of this situation, right? There's something about the way that they perceive life that is like, you know what? I'm going to go after it, even though you told me no. And I'm reminded, personally speaking, when I had my high school principal at the time. She was brand new to the school, and I remember her telling me, "Hey, Jess, you know, your grades aren't doing so well in this particular area, and in order for you to graduate, I'm gonna need you to, you know, either take some extra classes. I'm gonna need you to stay after. I'm gonna need you to maybe even do summer school." And I told her, well, you know, I was working two part-time jobs to help out my family and stuff at the time, and going to school full time, obviously, because you're in high school. And I remember her words to me was that there's no way, right? This is her words, that there was no way whatsoever that I would be able to graduate high school while working two part time jobs with the way my grades were. Now, just to give you a little bit of backstory, I had a medical history that tied into me not doing so well in school, just due to different medicines that I was on, just due to different stuff that was taking place. I experienced a lot of migraines in school. So I was dealing with neurology appointments and trying to, you know, take different medicines that would help with the migraines. And that was like a whole thing for like the last 2 years of high school. So things for me didn't go the way that I anticipated, not because I wasn't capable, but there was setbacks, right? That were just in front of me. There was quote unquote roadblocks that were placed there. But I didn't allow that to stop me, because when she told me that and she presented what she thought would be the rite of passage, right? For me to go from, you know, a high school student to graduating, she said the options in front of me were simple. I needed to quit the jobs and I needed to go ahead and take some extra classes in order for me to be able to pass. I saw her offer and I countered it. And I said, I'm not quitting the jobs, but I will look into a way to do better. Right? That was my counter. Why? Because I observed the situation and I said I didn't want to allow what was in front of me to become a setback, right? To become something that would overtake me and make me feel less than, or make me not feel as though I was smart enough to get through this school year, because I knew that I could do it, but I knew that I was going through challenges at the same time. So my confidence kicked in when she told me that I couldn't, because I was that person that if you told me I can't, I'm going to come back and show you that I can. Why? Because that was within me. There was this hunger inside of me that said, I'm going to overcome this and I'm going to show you that I did it. And that's what I did. I remember going to my math teacher. I remember talking to them, explaining to them what was going on and stuff like that. The social worker at the school was well aware of my history with my medical and stuff like that. So they had conversations from there. We came up with a game plan that allowed me to take extra classes, to take extra tutoring, to pass my classes with no summer school at that. And I was able to keep my two part-time jobs at the same time and still do well that semester, right? And this conversation must have happened, I think, in about February. So we were at the last leg of the year, right? Of senior year in high school. And I'm sharing this story with you because those were words that could have destroyed me, right? When you're telling somebody, listen, I know you're trying to help your family, but it's also hurting you, right? It causes you to kind of wonder, am I doing the right thing here, right? There's this hesitation that almost gets invited to this conversation, and you have to make a conscious choice to say, do I feed into it, or do I reevaluate and reassess and see if there's another option? Now, this is why I mentioned earlier that there are people who have this resiliency within them that is like, listen, I'm going for it and I'm gonna see what happens, versus other people who are like, you know what, it is what it is. I'm tired. I can't keep fighting back. I'm just over it, X, Y, and Z, right? And I feel like we have a choice. I can choose to be person A, or I can choose to be person B. So when we think about the unshakable confidence, right, that we carry and walking in faith in that, we have a choice, right? You can choose to walk in confidence. You can choose to have faith that it's going to work out. You can choose to do X, Y, and Z, or you can choose to do nothing at all. When we have confidence, now this is me speaking from like the present version of me, right? Not the one from back in high school, but in the present version of me, when I think about confidence and when I look at the concept of faith, The reason why I put them together is because I'm not looking at the confidence in the situation to come from me. I'm not looking at the concept that what I'm doing is coming from my own capabilities or my own abilities, right? Or my own knowledge or my own wisdom. That's not where I'm looking at things from. Instead, I'm looking at things from the perception of this, right? If God said that I can do X, Y, and Z, okay, God, you said it, therefore it must be true, right? If God is inviting you to an opportunity where He is saying, hey, I want you to go back to school and to get XY degree, that means that He's inviting you into an opportunity where you can begin to meet the destiny, right? That He has for you, when you can begin to come into alignment, right, with the purpose that He has set forth for you. So the confidence and the ability to be able to go back to school isn't necessarily of you. It's who you're trusting in. It's trusting in the fact that He said it, therefore you can do it. And I'm speaking on that because there's a lot of people that I have seen lately who have it in their hearts to go back to school, and there's one of two things that happen. One, they're either going back and they're like, listen, I'm gonna go back. I feel like God is telling me to. I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm going to just trust in Him and I'm going to do it, right? They're walking in the confidence that God is going to be with them in the midst. And then there's people who choose not to, right? There's people who come up with a lot of excuses. It's been too long. I don't know. I'm tired. I like it's just a lot, X, Y, and Z. There's a lot of elements here that come into play. So I speak on this because when I say there's a lot of people that I know who have literally like some people have gone back and gotten their doctorates recently. Some people are going to law school right now. There's people that I know who are getting their bachelors. There's people who I know who are getting their associates. There's people who I know who are getting their masters. Like, I know a lot of people who have had this urge over the last 2 years to just go back to school. And it's beautiful to me to watch because a lot of them had setbacks, right? Or something take place in their life that caused them to either go and drop out, or they accomplished a part of their program but they didn't finish it, or they did get to one degree but they didn't go to the next level, right? And for me, I'm one of them. So for me, I did start my master's program a few years ago after I got my bachelor's. At this present time, I haven't finished my master's due to life events that took place at that time. I dropped out, right? So I understand that desire that a person has to want to go back to school because I've been there. I'm there, right? Like, I get it. And I'm sharing that part because when you start feeling it pressed upon you to make those steps, those leaps of faith, then there's a confidence that you have to understand that comes with that. Now, for those who may not have that confidence, right? Because maybe there's people in your circle that are speaking ill to the seed that's being planted in you. I want to talk to you for a moment, right? Because there could be some seeds of doubt that are starting to rear their ugly face. There could be some seeds of fear that is starting to rear their ugly face, right? There could be some seeds of, you can't do this. The competition is too real. How are you going to afford it? And all these other things. And then all of a sudden, you start looking at this hope of, oh my goodness, I can prosper in this area, to watching that hope literally start to diminish essentially right before your very eyes, before it even has an opportunity to grow, right? Before it even has an opportunity to gain traction or to gain legs. And that's why it's also important in general, right, of who we're listening to. It's also important about who we're surrounded by. Because when we think about having unshakable confidence, you remembered what I said earlier. I was surrounded when I grew up with other women, other young ladies who were confident. So that allowed me to see a display of that in other people, regardless of what they were going through. These weren't young ladies who had perfect lives. No, these were ladies whose lives were vastly different from mine. For me, I came from a two-parent household. I think I was the only person, matter of fact, no, I was one of two who came from a two-parent household in the friend group that I had. A lot of my friends, their families were either single-parent households, their parents either were divorced, they weren't together. Like, there was all these different changes, right, that took place. Some of them were together, some of them got together after the fact. Like, there was a mixture. But yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, wait a minute, okay, hold on. There was a few more of us that had two-parent households, right? So a few of us did, but not everybody had that story. Some of us grew up in the projects. I was one of them. Some people grew up in nicer homes. Some of them grew up in nicer areas and others didn't. So there was a big difference on our lifestyles. So those lifestyles, right, those experiences that we had could easily have shook our confidence, right, and our abilities to do more or to even want more in life. So now you in your present age, right, depending on how you grew up, who you've been around, what you've been able to see, has now become a factor when it comes to how you see yourself and the capabilities that you have. But that's the part that we want to really begin to redirect. And we also want these feelings to come to the surface because we want to address them. We want to have an awareness about them. We want to be able to really identify where those feelings are coming from, right? If you're feeling less than capable or not as confident to pursue something that you feel in your heart that you're supposed to do, the question is why? Why do you feel that way? Why do you feel as though you're not adequate for this area? Why do you feel like your capabilities aren't good enough to actually accomplish it? What is it that is stopping you? This is when we really begin to identify these limiting belief systems that we have. Now, if you're someone who's caught a few of my videos, probably last month, right, in January 2025, I talked about mindset. And that's really where this comes from, right? We think about having unshakable confidence. Like we say that, right? Like, oh, God, give me unshakable confidence in this. Give me unshakable faith. And it's like, I can do that. But we have to understand that it's not just something that is put on you and done. No, 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 no. There's a work that has to take place because, again, there are experiences that we have gone through that have shaped us and that have molded us. But God is so good because He's the potter and we're the clay that He can refine us, right, through our journey with Him. And in doing so, there are patterns and habits, you guys, that we have to unlearn in the process. And with that, the mindset has to be renewed, right? So we can't just think that, oh, I'm going to do X and it's just going to immediately happen. Like, listen, I look at the concept because miracles happen and God is God. And I'm not going to put a limit on what God can do. Nope. But what I am going to say, though, for the general aspect here, that there is a journey that comes along with this, that there is a process that takes place, but that process allows you to see the development of growth and maturity that you are able to experience over time. And when we are able to be self-aware of that progress that is taking place, because we're not aiming for perfection here, then we're able to see the changes in our lives, and not only in our lives, but even in the lives of those that surround us. Why? Because now they're taking note. Because now they're seeing a change, because now they're seeing a difference. And there's something about this ripple effect, right, that now causes a person to want to do something that they may not have been able to do before. Better yet, it causes them to see that there are open doors that are actually right in front of them that they can actually begin to explore, because whatever was limiting their beliefs before has now been uncovered. It's now been uncapped. The scales have been removed. There's a quote that comes to mind, and I can't remember the full version of the quote, but I remember it was in the movie Coach Carter, and it talked about, it's not that we're inadequate, but it's that we're powerful beyond measure. And it was that when we are able to do that, that we also give other people, right, the ability essentially to feel that for themselves as well. Now, y'all, that's not a direct quote here, but that is the same concept here, that when we give people almost in a sense permission for them to be able to do the very same thing as well. Think about the concept of why we consume, reels and videos and TikToks and whatever, right? I don't watch TikTok, but listen, y'all know where I'm going with that part, right? Why? Because there are certain people, now some of it is nonsense, but for those who are watching the stories, right, or the lives of other people play out, is because there's something about what they're doing that is inspiring you, that is empowering you, that is causing you to reevaluate in a sense, or even reassess what it is that you're doing, for you to be like, you know what, I could be doing that. You know what? That could be me right now. You know what? There's something there that she's speaking to that I resonate with, and I'm going to dive in, or I'm going to tap into this because I feel like there's something there that I could be doing that I'm not doing just yet. We begin to speak life over people, hence the empowering, right, of others. When we speak, we should be pouring life into other people, not removing it, not diminishing them. We should be able to speak and pour out. We should be able to speak and speak life. We should be able to speak in a way that sparks, that causes people to feel ignited, that causes a spark inside of their belly to begin moving. So they're like, I don't know what's going on, but oh God, like I just feel like you in this because I don't know. I feel like there's a spark of energy that's starting to just come forth. It's the Holy Spirit moving within you, letting you know that there is something that is starting to click, letting you know that there's something that is starting to move, something that's starting to register, right? You finally got exactly what you needed in that very moment because maybe something was spoken and said that spoke to the seed of purpose that had been lying dormant within you. And now you're able to begin to see how the pieces are able to come together. But what happens if you don't do that? What happens if you keep holding on to the negative narrative? What happens if you keep holding on to the negative framework? You lose out on an opportunity to do something different. You lose out on an opportunity to step out in bold faith. You lose out on an opportunity to watch God move graciously through your life because it's the very thing that you've been praying for. Yet somehow, some way, which you have allowed to come into the doorway was fear and doubt that has now gotten in the way and taken up more space than what you could have ever have imagined it to do. Because now it took up the room that faith was supposed to occupy, and you're trying to figure out where is the room for me to grow in. And the room has been taken over by something else that you have to now uncover, that you have to now unlearn, that you have to now undo. That's why it's important that when we begin to see negative words, negative thoughts, negative people, negative words, right? Naysayers, X, Y, and Z come into what is supposed to be a faith move. It is important to guard it. It is important to guard it with everything. I think of the concept of guarding your heart. Why? So this way, something that doesn't belong there doesn't infiltrate, it doesn't penetrate. There is a purpose as to why when we have ideas sometimes and we don't say nothing and we're kind of like, we just gonna move in silence over here. There's a reason why there's certain seasons where you're called to just be quiet. There's a reason why what was his name? I can't remember the guy in the Bible. Not Mary, because Mary said, be it unto me when it came to having the baby Jesus within her. But it was the man, her cousin Elizabeth's husband, who he kept speaking all this doubt about how when X, Y, and Z, and the angel shut his mouth up. That's what's coming to mind, y'all. So listen, I'm just telling you what came to mind, right? But anyways, right? His mouth was quiet. And I'm sharing that part. Why? Because he couldn't keep speaking over what God was doing because it was trying to go against the very thing that was taking place. There is a reason why we have to be mindful of what we say, of what we do, who we're around, and all these things. There's a reason why God comes in with the word that tells us, renew your mind daily. It's not that he's saying renew your mind today and that's it and you're done, but he understands that stuff will happen day in and day out. So we have to be prepared and on guard to come against it, because today you could be cooling, but tomorrow could be a whole other battle. And you have to be able to remain unshakable, right, in your faith and confidence, right, that you're able to come against that. So how can we stand firm in that? By speaking the word of God, by speaking the word of truth into our lives, into our situations, into what it is that is in front of us. How do we go about that? Well, for me, I look at this. Grab you some scriptures, grab you some word, get some word in your belly. Listen, I know there's people who look at the Bible and they're like, well, the Bible's just the Bible. It is what it is. It's a story, done, right? And they keep pushing. And it's like, no. You need to look at the Bible as more than that. There's a woman who I heard on a video earlier today who was like, no, I look at the Bible as God, like the relationship with God. And I was like, that's a very interesting perspective, right? Why? Because she understands there's a relationship that she's been able to develop with the Lord by reading her word. Y'all, I love to be in the word. Like, I may not be in the word as every single day, all day long, the way that I probably would like to. I've had seasons where I've tried, though. I have tried. Yeah, I've tried. But, right, needless to say, God be like, Jessica, I got you. I need you to do some other stuff. Anyways, I'm being silly. Y'all catch the joke for a moment. Anyways, so all jokes aside, right? Get into your word. Develop a plan with God regarding his word. Ask him to show you the chapters, the scriptures that are speaking to you in the season that you're in. See, there used to be a point where I would grab my Bible and I would, flip it to a page. Like I would like kind of close my eyes, flip it to a page and be like, God, wherever I land, may it speak to me and what it is that you need me to know right now in this season. Right. And I did that when I first was like first brand new, because I didn't know the Bible. I didn't know every chapter. I didn't know every part of the Bible. I knew the New Testament, Old Testament, but I didn't know, like all of Luke, John, Timothy, and everybody. I didn't know. I would legit just be like, God, bring me to a place that I could read that is gonna speak to me, please. Like that was legit my ask to God. Because he knew I didn't know. I just needed to know. I didn't grow up reading my Bible. Like I knew. So let me preface it this way. I did grow up going to church, but I grew up going to a church that had like pre-made selections already. So we didn't bring our Bible to church. They just had pre-made selections. So that's what we did on Sundays. Right. So it wasn't until, and then I had my own personal Bible because I went to a different church when I was younger. And even at that other church, like I had it, I went there, but because there was like a lot of stuff that wasn't proper taking place, I stopped going there when I was little. That's a whole nother story, for real, for real. But anyways, right? But I did have my own personal Bible and I kept that Bible for years. And the only thing is that I kept it in a drawer. So when I moved from state to state, when I started having my little people, the same thing applied. I had my Bible, but I wasn't opening it up. I wasn't reading it. Now I came from a household where my dad, he prayed over us. Like he made sure we knew the word. He made sure that we prayed, but it wasn't something that we practiced opening up the Bible together and saying, hey, let's all read it. That's not what I did growing up. So for me as an adult coming to you, saying to you, using the Bible as more than just a book, I'm saying it because I've experienced it. I'm saying this from somebody who literally grew up as a child, right? Reading paraphrased versions of the Bible, praying in the household, but not having the foundation of the Bible in her hands all the time. And I'm sharing that with you because I don't want you thinking that, oh, this is my whole life. That's all I've known. No, not by a long shot. But I want you to understand that concept, though, that when I began to read the word, when I began to understand his scripture, when I began to understand that he will lead you to where he needs you to read in that season, that he's doing it because he's edifying you. And in his edification, you are able to build confidence in who he is and who you are in him. And as you build, as you rebuild, right? Because some of us are rebuilding in this hour, right? Our foundations weren't as sturdy. And now he's like, I'm going to scrap that and reinsert me into you so you can rebuild the way that you're supposed to be. But as you rebuild in him, there's a narrative about your life that begins to shift and it begins to change and it begins to be based on the foundation of who God is, right? One of my favorite scriptures that he's been highlighting a lot, especially this month, I'm really grateful about it, is that I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Like that's all that I really keep hearing is like, listen, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm like, yes, God, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And I know that we hear it and we say those words, but it's different when we begin to eat it. When we begin to nourish our bodies and our souls with it, you're nourishing your spirit with it because you're understanding this is what he says about you. That you are indeed, right, fearfully and wonderfully made. When you begin to change your narrative of how you speak and how you do things, you're understanding that all of that has to deal with your identity in Christ. Your mindset it deals with your identity. Your confidence deals with your identity. It deals with your mindset deals with your identity and it deals with your confidence and vice versa, flipped over, everything in between. All of them come together. The same thing with your habits. All of that comes together. So how I see it is that you can't really have one conversation without the other. Why? Because they all tie in. That being said, how do we move forward? One, I just mentioned replacing the negative talk with the word of God, replacing the fear and doubts with the word of God by acknowledging whatever it is that is causing us to be fearful and asking God to show us, bring the clarity, the revelation, right, of a source, especially if there is a source, if there's a rooted area where this is coming from, that He's like, listen, I'm not just bringing this up to bring it up, but I'm bringing this up because I need this area to be healed, right? I'm needing this particular area to be healed because there's a root there that has taken place. That's when we need to do the unlearning. Listen, I know deliverance come into play. That is a little bit out of my territory, but I know that part comes into play as well. So this is when we can't be ignorant, right, to how the enemy will try to use those things against us. That's why having this awareness and having these conversations are necessary. When we think about what it is that we're trying to do, where we're going, why things, feel like they're held back, or why we feel like, man, there's just another setback, another X, Y, and Z, because there's something there taking place. And we have to begin to identify what that is and what that looks like so we can move forward. Taking your prayer life seriously makes a difference. Being able to take that intentional time to sit with the Lord makes a difference. Being able to speak His word back over your life, yourself, your promises, the destiny, everything. Listen, the destination, right? All of it, it makes a difference. When we want to proclaim, listen, I'm reading one word, but another word's coming to mind. Proclaim the word of God. I'm going to leave that there because that's just the word that came to mind, y'all. It's just the word that came to mind. Anyways, the next part also comes into play with reclaiming your confidence, right? We mentioned that awareness. Y'all, we got to know the lies. We got to know the nonsense. 2, we talked about what? The truth, the word, the Bible, right? We got to do that part. Speaking life daily, where does that come into play? With our prayers, right? We're talking about this part. But what else are we able to do? Surround yourself, y'all, with voices that uplift you. We talked about that from the beginning. Y'all, your community, your friends, your families, those that are around you. But lastly, if you know that this next step that you're about to take, and I use school as the example at the beginning, but it could be anything. Just truth be told, it could be whatever it is that's upon you. Whatever it is that is in you to do, right? Whatever that looks like. Take action anyway, especially because you know that He is with you and He is backing you through it. Y'all, take action anyway. I know it can be scary to step out on faith. I know it can be nerve-wracking to make a live. I know it can be, I don't want to say nauseating, but I know for some people it can be like, I don't know if I want to show my face on camera. Listen, do it anyway. Do it anyway. Do it scared. It may not go the way that you anticipated the first time. That's okay. Guess what we talked about already? Progress over what? Perfection. Do it anyway. Because for real, your confidence is gonna grow as you go. Think about faith. Faith is a muscle. Yes, God gives us a mustard size seed of faith, right? That allows us to be able to look at a mountain and tell it to move and it will move. But faith is also a muscle, right? When I think about faith for me and I think about like my testimonies, y'all, that I have, and we got a lot of testimonies, I'm like, God, I couldn't have done X had I not gone through Y. Like, I'm just being honest here, right? Like, I had to go through JKL before I could get to XYZ. Because when I went through JKL, you was there when I seen you. And because I saw you then, when I got to the X, Y, and Z part, I recalled the JKL part. And because I was able to recall those parts, right, it encouraged me, it pushed me, and it grew me into what I needed to be in order to have the faith that I needed for that next season. Can I mention it? I'm going to mention it briefly. 1 Samuel 17, David and Goliath did the same thing. David sat there and looked at the Goliath and said, I'm going to beat you, X, Y, and Z, yada, yada. Saul said, yo, you can't do that. Why? Because you're nothing but a youth. You too little. Saul has been doing this since he was a youth, and he's a man of armor since then. You just a shepherd boy. But David then responded back with faith and said these two things. I have already faced lions and bears when they came against the sheep that I was watching for my father. Number 2, Just as God delivered me out of the hands of those two things, the lion and the bear, and I was able to slew them, I will do the same thing to this Philistine. Those two parts right there. He recalled what God did in a previous season that gave him the confidence to be able to go forth in action in the current season that he was in. You have to understand, as confidence grows in motion, please know that there are steps that you have already taken previously, that when you look to them, you start to realize that you can build on the faith of those experiences because you know that you're not doing it alone and that He has already and always been with you through it all. Think about it from that perspective. Change the lens, change your perspective, change your vantage point, change it from a different angle for a moment and just see things how He sees it. That being said, I feel like this was actually, I'm not even gonna say that. Nope, nope, nope. I'm gonna leave it with this. If you feel like this video, right, this episode brought you some value, then I want to encourage you to go ahead and like, share, and hit that subscribe button, right? And then I also want you to head over to my podcast channel as well, Ignite Your Glow, where these conversations are going to be happening a lot more often, right? Why? Because they're necessary and they're needed for the season that we're in and for the season that we're all headed into. So, lastly, I'm also going to go ahead and invite you to check out the links below, to check out our courses, to check out our, listen, sorry, I had a whole thought that came to mind. Anyways, check out the links below. There's sessions down there. I have blog posts on there. So much more is in the description box. Please go ahead and look at the links. Definitely go ahead and support your girl. I appreciate it. And lastly, if there was, like I mentioned before, something of value that you are honestly able to take away from this conversation, I just want to encourage you to drop it in the chat. You don't got to give me a full story, blow by blow, if you don't want to, but I would encourage you to let me know which part of this resonated with you, which part of this message was for you today. And if there's other areas that you would like me to highlight on the Ignite Your Glow podcast, let us know in the comments as well, so we can make sure that we are able to bring to you the food that is necessary for this season to feed your spirit, to get you in shape for where you are headed. All right, you guys, thank you so much. And don't forget to do what? Ignite your glow.